Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Zeke-ollege Football. This is going to be a new format that I'm going to be trying out. I'm going to be spacing it out over the course of a couple videos so they don't get too long. But I am going to go through and rank every single college football team based on how much I like them. This is entirely subjective, but I want it to be as transparent as possible. When you are reviewing something that has as many angles as college football does. I mean, 134 teams. Uh, you know, I just want people to know which teams I like, which teams I don't like. So that way we can get all the favoritism out of the way. You know where my priorities lie. And hopefully, um, hopefully you guys like this series. So the first this video that you're watching right now, I'm going to be putting them into tiers, and then I'm going to make separate videos for each different tier as I uh, place them from 134 all the way up to number one. So, without further ado, let's get started, and we're just going to go down in alphabetical order. So, I have this Wikipedia list of all of the FBS college football teams. I'm not going to include FCS teams for the purposes of this list because 134 is already a pretty big undertaking. But let's start off with Air Force. Now, a couple of the things that I factor in when I'm making this list. How much do I like the uniforms? Do I like the states that they're in? Do I have any history with these programs? Do I like a team that's maybe a rival? This will all play into account. Now, Air Force, um, I don't really have that much history with. I think their uniforms are okay. I like the state of Colorado. You'll see that throughout. But Air Force is going to start off in that mediocre tier over there. Now, moving on, the Akron Zips. Uh, Akron's one of those programs that I don't really I don't really have much of a preference towards. They don't do a lot to stand out to me. I'm gonna probably throw them I think I'm gonna throw them in mediocre. Now, obviously, bell curve, a lot of teams are gonna end up in mediocre, so I'll probably be the longest of the rankings, but uh I don't they don't do anything to make me actively dislike them. Um but yeah, I don't have too much care either way about Akron. Alabama. I don't think this is a controversial opinion. A lot of people don't like Alabama. You don't like teams that win a lot because they're just really good. And Alabama is one of those teams. They're just really good. They win a lot. I'm also not a huge fan of their uniforms. Uh, find them to be a little boring. So Alabama gonna go in the strongly disliked category. Now, Appalachian State. That's a team that I really like. I like their color scheme. I like the community that they've fostered. They've been a part of a bunch of huge college football moments, upsetting Michigan, upsetting Texas A&M. They always find themselves in these big sort of situations, and I find myself rooting for App State quite a bit. So strongly I like App State. Arizona. The Arizona Wildcats don't really have much of an opinion on them either way. Uh, but you have to remember this is going to be for the 2024 season. I like some of the pieces that they have. I like Noah Fafita. I like Tatairo McMillan. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly. And then I like the head coach that they brought over from San Jose State. I like Brent Brennan. So I'm probably going to put Arizona into the like category. I think I like Arizona this year. Now, Arizona State uh, is also going to go in that like category. I understand that they're rivals, um, but I really like Arizona State's uniforms a lot. I like the uniqueness of the Sun Devil as a mascot. There's a lot to like there. Um, but there's still a team that's growing, developing. So Arizona State, I'm going to throw in that like category. Arkansas. Uh, I dislike Arkansas. Now I am a fan of the Missouri Tigers. We'll get to them later on. But the battle line rivalry, despite the fact that it was manufactured, yeah, I don't really like them. A lot of their fans on Twitter have been very vocal. So not a huge Arkansas guy. Uh, I do like some of the pieces that they added. I like Talon Green, but I just don't like Arkansas all that much. Plus, their uniforms, again, boring. That red and white color scheme, it's so common throughout all of college football. They remind me a little bit of Alabama. Arkansas State. Uh, I don't think about Arkansas State all that much. There are a lot of teams in the Sun Belt that I like a lot more than Arkansas State. I think I'm going to put them in the dislike category as well. Now, Army. Uh, I don't have many strong feelings towards or against Army. Uh, as for, the United States military in general, I like the military. I'm very thankful that they fight for our freedom, but this is just a college football ranking, can't really factor that in. So, their football team is going to go in the mediocre tier. And then Auburn, I like Auburn. Um, I like the blue and orange color scheme. Uh, I like them a lot more than Alabama, so I root for them every single Iron Bowl. They've been a part of big moments. These are the sort of criteria that I run through. Uh, their biggest knock for me is that they wear white helmets. Not a huge white helmet guy, but I think that they do it better than some other teams do. So I'm going to throw Auburn in that like category. Okay, Ball State. Not a huge Ball State guy. They don't stand out to me. They don't really have a strong history either way, or one that really resonates with me. Not a huge fan of the Cardinals as a mascot. Uh, really just not. I just don't like them. Um, so Ball State going in the strongly disliked here. Again, this is purely subjective. So I don't know. I don't need a reason to justify not liking them. I just don't. Um, let's go with Baylor. Baylor gonna throw in that dislike category. They're one of those teams where they have had teams that I've liked watching in the past. I liked watching them back when they had RG3. They just don't do a lot to excite me. I don't like their uniforms very much. The color combo of green and yellow, eh, not a huge fan. Um, I do like Daquan Finn, but I liked him a lot more when he was playing for Toledo. So I'm going to leave them in the dislike category. Now I'm going to rank these within the categories as well. So uh, when you see uh, their team name towards the top of a category, it doesn't mean that I like one better than the other. You'll see that in future videos. Boise State. Much like App State, I really like Boise State. They always play the perennial underdog role. I liked a lot of the Chris Peterson, Kellen Moore teams of the late 2000s. Now, obviously, I wasn't a big college football watcher in the late 2000s, um, seeing that I was a toddler. But I like the blue field. I like their color scheme. There's a lot to like about Boise State, especially at the Group of Five level. Boston College. This is going to be a team that I like, um, but not strongly like. Grew up in Boston, so I have that sort of background where BC was really the big school that was around where where I was. So I should be a Boston College fan, but I'm not. Um, one of uh, one of their big rivals, Boston University, is my father's alma mater. So I grew up going to BU hockey games and cheering against BC, and some of that resentment still lingers a little bit. Now I'll root for them for Boston pride and everything like that, but I'd like them. I don't really like them. Bowling Green. That's gonna go right in the strongly dislike category. I don't like their color scheme at all. They look like the Cleveland Browns, and I don't like the Cleveland Browns color scheme either. They are rivals for a couple of the MAC teams that I do like. They haven't really done anything that stands out that makes me say, "Oh, I want to be a Bowling Green fan." So they're gonna go in the strongly disliked category here. Uh, Moving forward, the Buffalo Bulls. Uh, Buffalo is gonna drop itself strongly into that dislike category. Not the strongly dislike, just into the dislike category. They've had players who I've liked in the past. Khalil Mack, uh, most notably Malcolm Kuntz. But they just sort of exist barely in my mind. I remember them, but I don't have any real feelings about Buffalo. So uh, they're just going to go in the dislike category. BYU. BYU is going to go uh, into the dislike category as well. Um, Again, they've had players that have gone into the NFL that have been very successful. But I feel like every single season I'm just looking at BYU and I'm not that impressed. They're okay, but I don't have many strong feelings about the Cougars. Cal. Uh, Cal's going to go into that mediocre tier. I think that they're an interesting team. I like their color scheme of blue and yellow. They're not my favorite use of blue and yellow. I think they're fine, but it's going to be interesting to see how they play in the ACC. So, woohoo, Cal. All right, let's move forward. Ah, here we go. Central Michigan. I like Central Michigan. I think that they have an interesting team name. I like the you know using the Native American team name, the Chippewas. Go Chips. I like their color scheme a lot. I think their use of yellow in contrast to the maroon looks pretty good. Um, and I would say now. This didn't used to be my opinion a couple of years ago, but I would say now they are my favorite directional Michigan school. Let's see. Charlotte 49ers. That's going to go into the strongly dislike category. Um, I feel like every time I think about the Charlotte 49ers, I don't it doesn't bring joy to me in any facet. I don't like their use of tan as one of their colors. And you could try to argue with me and say, oh, well, it's a very light shade of gold. No, it's not. It's tan. It's beige. Uh, and beige and green are not really a good color combination, in my personal opinion. The 49ers, I don't really have any strong feelings about that as a mascot, but I don't think that they use it properly. I just don't really care about Charlotte, and that apathy has sort of turned into disliking them. Let's go. The Cincinnati Bearcats. I liked them a lot a couple years ago. Cincinnati is going to fall into that mediocre category for me. I don't really have much of an opinion on the Bearcats. Again, I liked them a lot a couple years ago when they had players that I really cared about. Now, they are sort of just existing in the new version of the Big 12. So it'll be interesting to see if they have a good season, a bad season, whatnot. Now, I'm going to throw Clemson in the mediocre tier as well. I find them a team that I'll root for a lot when they're facing off against other like high caliber big programs. But they're one of those teams that it really is about 50-50 whether I'll root for them or not. Um, so I like Clemson, but I don't like them more than a fair number of teams on this list. They're really middle of the pack for me. What's next? What's next is Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina, one of those teams that I do like, um, but I don't like them as much as I once did. You're going to see this to be sort of a trend. I get attached to certain players on teams, and then when they transfer out or graduate, um, I don't have that same connection. And for Coastal, that's Grayson McCall. When I think of Coastal Carolina, I think of Grayson McCall, and he's no longer on the team. He's now on NC State, so I like them a little bit less than I once did. They would have been in the strongly like category, but I don't like them as much anymore. The Colorado Buffaloes. Um, so I'm gonna throw them in the like category again instead of the strongly like category. And part of that is just because Coach Prime, I like that he's bringing more exposure to the Colorado program. I've liked the Colorado program for a lot. Early on, when I was doing a rebuild, a dynasty in NCAA football 14, one of the first places that I sent my head coach was to Colorado to try to rebuild them, bring them up to their past glory. So that was back in like 2019, 2020. They are a team where I think I like the team a lot more than I like the players on the roster right now. Uh, Coach Prime rubs me the wrong way a little bit, but I guess whatever you do to bring attention to your program. Um, Next up, we have Colorado State. I like Colorado State as well. I think Jay Norvell is doing a good job rebuilding that program. Colorado State, also one of my mom's alma maters, so I have that personal connection there, and I like them more. Duke. Uh, I don't like Duke. Um, I think of them more as a basketball school. They commonly use white helmets. Again, not a huge fan of white helmets. Um, I just don't think that I think their uniforms are quite boring. And then some of the players that I cared about on their team, players like Riley Leonard, who I was interested in seeing how his career progressed, he transferred out. So I don't like Duke moving forward. East Carolina. Um, I like East Carolina. Again, one of those teams I that I find myself rooting for in the group of five, especially in the American Conference. I think they're one of the few teams that I really like in the American Conference. So ECU, I think, is one of those teams. Purple and yellow. It's a nice color scheme. I like the ECU Pirates. Eastern Michigan. Um, yeah, they're gonna go in the mediocre tier for me. I like East. It's my favorite of the directions. At least for the directional Michigan schools, I like the Eastern direction more than Central or West. But I don't like their uniforms. Um I don't like their gray field. Um, but they're okay. They're all right. Like I'll root for them over some MAC teams. Like I'll root for them over Buffalo or over Ball State, Bowling Green, that kind of thing. But they're just okay. Now we're into the Florida section. Florida Atlantic, FAU. Uh, Not a huge FAU fan. uh, they don't really have that many players that I care about. Don't really have any uniforms to write home about. They're just not really that interesting of a team to me. Now I do like them more than some American Conference teams, but that doesn't say much. FIU, Florida International. I like Florida International. Uh, yeah, I'm just gonna abbreviate these two. Um, so FIU, one of those teams. I like the Panthers as a mascot. I like their color scheme. Um, I like their specialty uniforms when they do the Miami Vice color scheme. They're a team that I root for a lot in Conference USA. They've never been really all that good, or at least not been good for a while. But I find myself rooting for them more than I find myself rooting for most. The Florida Gators. Uh, I like Florida. Again, I like their color scheme. I like their I like their stadium. The Swamp has a good atmosphere. Um, Now, can their fans be a little much? Yeah, sometimes, but out of the Florida schools, they are one of my favorites. Florida State. Um, Not a huge Florida State fan. Uh, the Seminole War chant gets on my nerves a little bit. Uh, they've had players that I like come out of Florida State, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan of them. And then let's move forward with Fresno State. Uh, I don't like Fresno State. Um, they're not my favorite use of the bulldog as a mascot. I just I'm not a huge Fresno State fan. I think their uniforms are a little boring. I've liked some of the players that have come out of there, but not a lot. Georgia, the Georgia Bulldogs. I like them a lot more. Better use of the Bulldogs than Fresno State. Gonna throw Georgia into the uh, mediocre tier. They are a team that I liked more before they started really winning all that much. And I know that sounds fickle, but the whole point of this list is for me to be fickle. Um, so at the end, when I have this all ranked, I'm gonna have a list from 134 to 1. So if I tune into a random college football game, uh, I can always look at the list and see who I could root for. So that's what the initial purpose of these lists were in the past. This is not the first year I've done one of these. This is the first year I've recorded my process in doing one of these, though. So, you know, trying to sort of entertain and justify. But um, Georgia going into the mediocre tier. Georgia Southern. I do not like Georgia Southern. They're one of those teams, for me at least, I view them as blue Alabama. Um, I don't have any strong opinions about any of their players. Um, like, could I name a Georgia Southern player for you on the current roster? Probably. But it would take me a little bit to try to remember one. So, Georgia Southern, one of those teams that I dislike. Georgia State. I like Georgia State. Their program in a little bit of disarray right now. Um, but you know, I find Georgia State to be one of those teams that I'll root for them. There are other Sun Belt teams that I like more, but I'll root for Georgia State. Okay, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is the definition of a mediocre team for me. I like Brent Key. I like what he's doing. I like Haynes King. I like what he's doing there. Uh, they just don't do anything to wow me. Like I'll find myself rooting for Georgia Tech sometimes, but I feel like I've grown on Georgia Tech a little bit more recently. But I just, yeah, I don't dislike them. So they're gonna stay in the mediocre tier. Hawaii. I mean, how can you? Yeah, no, I'll put them in the mediocre tier. Uh, I don't dislike Hawaii, but they're not one of my favorites out of the Mountain West. I have other teams that I like more out in that conference. Um, so they're fine. Fine. Let's see. Houston. Houston's gonna go up a little bit here to the mediocre tier. I didn't used to like them. I like Some of their new additions, I like them adding Willie Fritz, uh, but they're not one of my favorites in the Big 12 either. The Illinois Fighting Illini. It's another one of those teams where I was sort of regaled about stories about how good they used to be in the past, made me sort of root for them, hoping that they can return to that sort of podium. I like some players on their team. They do play that brand of Big Ten West football, which is a little tough on the eyes, but I find myself rooting for Illinois. Cannot say the same for Indiana. We'll throw them down. Uh, Not a big fan of the Hoosiers. Again, uniforms very boring. Uh, Players that I've liked from Indiana have all long since transferred out. Like, if you asked me a couple years ago my thoughts on Indiana, I would have been like, "Oh, well, Michael Penix is cool. He hasn't been there for a couple years." So Indiana, one of those teams that I don't really like all that much. I like Kurt Signetti, but I wish that Indiana had just something for me to gravitate towards. Iowa. I like Iowa. And part of that is the inner sicko in me. I like the sickos committee. I love a good punt. um, I like good, strong defense. Iowa absolutely provides that. Absolutely eye-bleachingly terrible offense. But hopefully that'll change. They got a new offensive coordinator. I like their uniforms a lot. I like the Kinnick Wave a lot. So hopefully good things are coming to the Iowa program. Uh, Iowa State. Iowa State. Let's see. Iowa State, I think I'm gonna put into the like category. Um, I like Matt Campbell. I like what he's doing there. Rocco Becht, um, and Abu Sama. I like some of the players that they have. Um, that being said, not my favorite team in the Big 12. But I find myself rooting for Iowa State more than I root for some of the other teams there. Um, but yeah, and then I think I'll get to after Kentucky is where I'll end this video. I'll make it a part one, and then I'll work on part two uh, a little bit later. But Jacksonville State. It's one of those teams new to the FBS. They just joined last year. I like Rich Rod as a coach. I don't care for the uniforms. I don't like them. I don't hate them. I think that Jacksonville State is very mediocre. James Madison, another new team. I quite like James Madison. I like their color scheme. I like their logo, or their retro logo of the dog with the crown on. Um, and they've been a part of some big moments already. Um, so yeah, James Madison, pretty cool in my eyes. Uh oh, okay. The Kansas Jayhawks. I know that they're everyone's darling team. I like Lance Leipold. I wish he took a different job because I hate Kansas. Oh, I hate Kansas. Um, so again, Missouri fan, biggest rival of the Missouri Tigers. Border war. I can't stand them. I can't stand them. I would relish in their terrible, terrible seasons. And now they've started to get good, and I just can't wait until they play against Missouri so Missouri can beat them and finally shut those Kansas fans right back up. Kansas State. I like Kansas State a lot more than I like Kansas. Um, they've had a couple players that I've really enjoyed. Um, Most recently, Deuce Vaughn, Ben Sinnott, I quite liked as well. But I find myself rooting for other teams above them as well. I like the color purple a lot, but I think that sometimes their use of purple is very sparing. For instance, their away uniforms are just silver, white, and silver. I think that were better options there. Kent State. Kent State's going to be a team that I throw in this same mediocre tier. Um, they're they're one of those programs where they got decimated by the transfer portal. I hope that they can rebuild. But they're not very good. They don't really have any players that uh I can point to and be like, that's the reason why I like Kent State. Um, they're just mediocre. And finally, for this video, uh, again, this is part one of a two-part video where I put them in the tiers, and then we'll go through and rank each and every tier. Um, so Kentucky. Kentucky, I I'm a little apathetic towards. I like them more than teams that Missouri really doesn't like. So I like them more than Arkansas and Alabama. Um, but out of the SEC teams, I think they're in my uh, lower half. So Kentucky will go in the dislike tier. Thank you. If you reached this part of the video, thank you so much for watching all the way here. If you like this content, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. If you dislike this content, let me know something so that I can improve it. I want to make this the best watching experience for you guys. So if you have any concerns, feel free to message me over on Instagram at Zeke.ollege Football. That is ZEKE.OLLEGEFOOTBALL. So I'm just going to spell that out here. Zeke.ollege Football. So uh, that is going to be the Instagram handle if you want to go over. Uh, I respond to DMs. I respond if you tag me in a post, that sort of thing. So let me know your thoughts on this style of content. If you like it, dislike it. Let me know if you disagree with anything that I said, or if you agree with anything I said. Again, let's get some comments to boost these videos. I'm trying to grow my channel a little bit during the summer while I still have some time. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching part one. Part two should be up not too long after this. Alrighty. And okay, we're just gonna say goodbye, everyone.